Welcome students to the next session of biomedical content writing. Here in this session, we are going to discuss about the voice we use while writing the biomedical content. So this session is about active versus passive voice in biomedical content writing. And here we will discuss uh, what the active and passive voice is and how important it is to improve or make your writing effective for the readers. Although it looks very simple and it looks very old subject to be studied for this course, but let me tell you that this we have studied in pure grammar while we were in schools. But here in this course, its importance is much more than that, because you're going to learn that how does this voice affects your reader and how does it affect the quality of your writing. And it has been found that most of the writing done, especially in sciences, life sciences, they are poor, dull, and not readable because it does not clearly gives the message, intended message to the reader. So, and the reason is the improper or the wrong usage of active and passive voice. Although some of you may be having a clear idea about what the active and passive voice is, but here we are going to touch the major points, that which voice should be used when and how does this impact the understanding and effectiveness of your content when you write for biomedical or life sciences content. So here we go with this. Now, active voice is more important and credible compared to the passive voice in biomedical content. Now, why does it so? If we go and just see the basic definition of how the voice is considered when we call the voice as active voice, some of you may be having the concept, or the I don't want you to have the definition of to learn the definition of what is active voice and what is passive voice, because but if you understand the concept, that is more than enough to find out that how you can utilize and how you can use it to develop your content. So just see to this principle of English sentences. In English language, if you see any sentence, it consists of a uniform structure that consists of three main elements. If you read any sentence, it has three elements. One is subject, one is the verb, and one is object. The subject means in your sentence, who is doing the action. Whatever something is done on something and something is done by something. And the person or the thing who does the action, that is known as the subject of the sentence. And what is done, that action is known as the verb. And on whom it is done, who is the receiver of the action, that is the object of your sentence. So subject plus verb plus object, that is known as the entire or the complete sentence in English language. And this you can find in any sentence. There is no kind of a exception to this rule. Now, just observe these three sentences I've taken from the medical and biomedical literature only. Read the first sentence. It says the doctor focuses on complications of surgery. The second is the patient will provide details of family history. Third says the department has already sent a reply. Now in first sentence, somebody is focusing on something, and that somebody is the doctor. That is the subject of the sentence. And what the doctor is doing, he's focusing on. Focuses on. This focuses is your verb because it is the action done. And complications of surgery is the object. which has been focused upon. So you can see subject plus verb plus object. Similarly, the patient will provide details of family history. In this, the patient, if we talk about, is the subject of the sentence, will provide is the verb, and details of family history is the object. And third sentence, the department has already sent a reply. The department is actually the subject, and what the department has done, it has already sent. Already sent is the verb, and reply is the object. So you can see this particular pattern in all the three sentences. Now this pattern is recognized as the standard pattern by which you normally talk in your day-to-day language. And when you are reading the book, this is the common way how our brain perceives the information. Now, if you change this pattern and you bring it to the other pattern, that is object plus verb plus subject, means who has done what has now been converted into what is done by whom. So now see the three sentences again are written, and we see first sentence becomes complications of surgery were focused by the doctor. Now here the action, the subject is now at the last of the sentence, because something is done by somebody, and that something becomes the first part of the sentence, which is the object. Complications of surgery is the object. Now it has been focused by the doctor, and the doctor is the subject, whereas focused by is the verb. Details of family history will be provided by the patient. Details of family history is your object. Provided, will be provided is the verb, and by the patient is the subject. And you can see by is the common element that is helpful in adding the subject to your sentence. Now, by doing this activity, you can see the meaning of the sentence remains same, but as a reader, if you read this, you'll find a bit complicated, or bit it takes time for our mind to perceive the information in this form. Here, the sequence of three parts, that is subject, object, and verb, changes. In earlier version, it was subject plus verb plus object. In this, it is object plus verb plus subject. So this form of a conversion has actually changed the voice of your sentences. The earlier was when your subjects were the first part of your sentence. This kind of a voice is known as active voice, because you are upfront telling that who is doing what and on whom. Whereas in the passive, if we see, the subject goes at the end, means your sentence first tells that what is done, on whom, and by whom. So your subject goes at the end of the subject, at the end of the sentence. So I would like to just say in Hindi, maybe it will become easier for you all. If something is happening and it is done by somebody, किसी ने कोई काम किया, तो जो किसी है, जिसने वो काम किया है, अगर वो सेंटेंस के शुरुआत में आ जाता है, then your sentence is in active voice. अगर काम को करने वाला सेंटेंस के लास्ट में चला जाता है, then it becomes your passive voice. This is in the plain Hindi what I mean to say. Now, how does this affect our understanding of the sentence? Now, these sentences are simple sentences. Maybe you will be able to understand what is said in this sentence. But as the length of your sentence increases, it becomes difficult and sometimes impossible to find out that what is done by whom. And sometimes even the subject of the sentence, means who has done the activity, is actually missing from the sentence, or the reader is not able to perceive that where is the doer of the activity. That we will see in the examples further in this session. Now, two voices can be formed to write any type of a content. First is the active, which is a subject plus verb plus object. Second is the passive, which is object plus verb plus by subject. So you can easily find out when there is a by subject, means by the doctor, by the patient, by the nurse, by the scientist. So that by significance signifies that your sentence is written in the passive voice. Now, why it is problematic in writing? As I told, that active voice is subject plus verb plus object. This is the most familiar structure. Everybody knows. Our mind perceives it easily. It is easier to read. And any depart from this particular order actually makes the reader to think through 2 or 3 steps to understand the content. If you're writing something in active voice, it helps the reader to understand that the doctor has asked for the reports. But the report has been asked by the doctor actually makes pushes the reader to think deeper to understand the meaning. And even from the research, if we see, there was a research on cognitive psychology which says that active voice is misunderstood by 26% of the readers. If the same text is given in active voice, 26% of the readers misunderstand that. But when the same text is given in passive voice, it is misunderstood by 92% of the readers. So that is why the passive voice is, there is a more probability that it is going to be misunderstood by your readers. Now, this is very important slide, because why we are saying that the active is good and passive is bad, or passive should be less preferred. Actually, both the voices are important for the reader, for the writer, and both have some kind of an advantage when we write something. Which one to be used and which should be avoided at a particular instance or at a particular point. But there are certain clearly defined rules. When we talk about biomedical writing, there are certain rules which are to be followed and which will make our content more effective and clear. And these are the 5 issues when you use in the passive voice. First is it reduces the precision. As I told you in the first session, that precision is about one word, one meaning, one sentence, one meaning, one paragraph should have one idea. That is the precision. So the moment you use the passive voice, the precision or the meaning of your sentence gets distorted, which we will see in the examples further. And also, when you convert something from the active voice to the passive voice, there are chances that most of the times the number of words in your content increases. And as I told earlier, it is always good if you can write the same thing in less words with more effective meaning. It is always preferred by the reader, because it saves the time of the reader, as well as it saves the time of the editor or the proofreader while correcting the content. And for the reader also, writer also, it becomes easier to write because you have less words to comprehend and you are using less words to convey more meaning. And one of the comparison I gave, that every word should be treated by the writer as a dollar you are spending to convey your meaning. So the lesser words you are writing means the less dollars you are spending to convey the same meaning. So in passive voice, the number of words increases. Second is it reduces the clarity. I'll show you how it happens. The clarity of your content also gets reduced when we use when any writer uses the passive voice. And the clarity is also one of the important areas, or the one of the important qualities that a good content must have. Third is that it reduces the accountability of writer. Most of the time it happens, the passive voice is used because it reduces the accountability of writer. Means something is done by someone, and that someone is somewhere at the back of your sentence. It means the doer of the action is not in front of the reader. So it reduces the accountability of the writer. That also you will learn through through the further sentences, the examples you will be shown that how it happens. Then fourth comes, it offers the false sense of objectivity. False sense of objectivity means you feel that something is happening, but actually you don't know how it is happening, how it is done, and what was who is doing that. That all these things are not clear, but somewhere it is hidden, and somewhere it is not actually disclosed by the writer. So it is a false sense of objectivity you are giving to the reader. Fifth is the dehumanizes your content, because once you say the surgery was performed by the doctor, you have placed the human part, the doctor, at the end of your sentence. Sometimes you remove the surgery was performed, by whom you are not writing. So in passive voice, we mostly either take the human part at the end of the sentence, and sometimes we also remove the humans from the sentence in passive voice, which is again a big problem, that why the passive voice is considered to be less preferred compared to the active voice in your writing. So remember these 5 things, and it will help you avoid the passive voice. But it does not mean that you are going to never use the passive voice, because there are certain circumstances, certain situations where the passive voice is important, and we will discuss about those also in the coming slides. Now, how you are going to identify whether the passive voice is there or not? So one of the ways which is there is identify passive voice by looking for by. As I told you, who has done the action is actually becomes by the subject, by the doctor, by the hospital. Just look at this red colored sentence, which says, which is in the passive form, it was also ordered by the doctor that the cost of both surgeries be paid by the hospital. Now, this is the passive sentence. Now, in the blue, we have activated the sentence, we have made into, converted into the active voice. And then it says, the doctor also ordered that the hospital pay for the cost of both surgeries. So just compare. As a reader, I would like you to just for 1 minute or 2 minutes, just think about, out of these 2 sentences, which one is easier for you to understand? Which one is easier as a reader for you to get the message which the sentence is saying? If you see carefully, the blue sentence, blue colored active form sentence is very easy, straightforward, and you know what is happening and what is done by whom. Doctor is the subject. The doctor has also ordered, and that the hospital pay. Who is paying? The hospital pays for the cost of both surgeries. Whereas in the passive, it was also ordered by the doctor that the cost of both surgeries be paid by the hospital. So you see the human part or organization part that goes at that sentence, which actually, if you compare even the number of words, you can easily see that in the red colored sentence, the total number of words is around 80. And if you see in the active form, the total number of words is in around 30 or 12. See, it is, you may say that it is just the difference of 1 or 2 words, but if you consider the whole document, if you consider the entire article which you are writing, if in every sentence of 10 words you are removing 3 words or 2 words, it means you are reducing actually 20 to 30% of your content. So don't go by one sentence. try to see the bigger picture. If you're writing 10 pages and you are reducing 2 words from every 10 words, then it means you are reducing actually 2 pages from 10 pages. So proportionately, the percentage of content will get reduced by 20 to 30%. So this is the difference you can see in passive voice and active voice. And also you have seen that it is the active form is more clear also. It has lesser number of words also. It is direct, it is simple, and it looks interesting to the reader. That's the most important thing. As a writer, we have to think that the reader should find our content interesting. Otherwise, there is no point of writing the best content. Whatever you think is the good is not good if your reader doesn't like it. Now, passive becomes harder when the doer is not mentioned. As I told, sometimes what happens is you write the passive form and sometimes you don't mention, even the writer does not mention that who has done that. For example, just read this red colored sentence which says, it is expected that the introduction of new project funding arrangements will go some way to ensure the cost overruns are addressed. The situation will be closely monitored. Now, if you see to this sentence, who expects that the new program funding arrangements will help address the cost overruns, and who will monitor? In the red sentence, something is being monitored, but who is monitoring? There is no discussion or no mention of that. Secondly, it is expected, but who expects? It is not there in the sentence. So this shows that there is no human in your sentence, which makes your writing dull, which makes your reader think about what is happening, because no doer of the action is available in this sentence. So the reader may get confused, or reader may lose the interest that what is happening, who is doing, what is being done. And that is why the writing becomes less effective compared to the active form. Now, reasons why people get attracted to the passive voice in the first place. See, most of the time, the writer, if you see, even we also, I and you, whenever you write, it is a natural tendency that we prefer or go down to use the passive voice. The one particular reason is that passive voice, especially I'm talking about the biomedical or the life sciences writers. If you see your manuscripts also, if you see your research writing, even in academics also, you'll find that passive voice helps a writer to avoid responsibility, because you are not naming who is responsible for the action. For example, just see to the sentence below. Any adverse findings of relevance will be considered, communicated, and acted upon promptly. Now, this is the sentence taken from some pharmaceutical study and written about the drug. But who will act? Who will consider? There is nothing mentioned. If you have done that study and if you have you have acted upon that, then you say that our team found that adverse findings of relevance. Our team is going to consider, communicate, and act upon those adverse findings. So that shows the reader that you're talking about your team. You're talking about that how your team is going to consider, communicate, and act upon the particular adverse findings. But in this sentence, there is no subject, which says that the reader is not able to get that who is doing what and who is responsible for whatever is happening in your writing. So that is the one reason why most of the scientists, when they want to avoid the responsibility, they use such language. And that happens when you are less confident or you're not actually knowing that what exactly you as a person or as a scientist or as a life sciences writer want to convey to your reader. Now comes the other reason Why people or the writers get attracted to the passive voice is it can also be the symptom of unclear and underdeveloped thinking by a writer. Many of the time, when you write, as I told you in the first session, that writing is more about thinking, because when you put your thoughts on paper, you are on the screen, you are actually trying to put your thinking in words in your writing. So if your thinking is unclear, or if your thinking is underdeveloped, or your thinking is hazy about the subject, what you do is you move to the passive voice, because you actually don't know that what is happening, who is doing, and on whom this action is done. But you have the unclear picture of the issue or the circumstance which you put forward in the passive voice. You can check out the example below, that it might be suggested to the state government that some consideration be given to establishing a suitable set of performance indicators that would enable the assistance of merit of this approach. Now, in this entire sentence, you are not able to find, any reader is not able to find that who is doing what. But there is some indication that something is happening. Somebody has suggested to the state government to consider about a suitable set of performance indicators, which will help the state government to assess the merit of the approach of performance indicators. But who has given this particular suggestion? Why it has been given? What has done? There is no kind of a human interaction or the human part existing in this sentence. And that is why this sentence gives the impression that the writer is unclear or not fully developed to think about the subject of which he is talking about. So that is how this is the other reason why passive voice becomes obstacle for the reader to get the meaning of the sentence. Now, government writing, if we talk about why the passive voice, where you find, if you see, you read any of the government document, you read any of the document of the investment companies, or even the bank documents, financial statements, reports, they are mostly written in the passive language. And why it is done so? First is to avoid the accountability and also to create ambiguity, because they don't want that every reader should understand that who is going to do what and who is responsible for what, so that they are always can always evade from the responsibility which they carry for your money or for your life. Because government also, in government documents, you just read any document, you won't be able to identify that who is actually responsible for what, because as such the government word is a very generic word, but in the government, who the particular person is going to do, most of the times that is very difficult to understand. So you'll find in such situations passive voice is used, although it is not wrong, because they also do it for certain purpose, and that purpose we will study, we will see the reasons why they use, or there is not always it is the bad reason, sometimes it is done intentionally also for the good of others also. But when we talk about the life sciences, when we talk about the health sciences or the medical sciences or biomedical subjects, we must use the clearly that who is responsible for what, so that our writer can find interest in your science. Because science is something, if people don't understand, they will not enjoy what you want to say to them through your writing. So we need to understand that by using active voice in our writing, writers is actually humanizing the content by adding or bringing people back to your sentence. When your sentences, when your words are linked to people, when your characters, when you write that I have done this experiment to find out this, people will be more happy to listen to this. Rather than writing that the experiment has been performed by somebody to find out something. Because that does not contain that who is doing what. And that is the role of active voice when we talk about the writing. Now, this makes your content more interesting, more effective, more clear, more precise, and of course, more engaging for your audience. Now, if we talk about academic writing, it is full of passive voice. You can easily see this simple sentence I have shared with you. Drug A was poured into drug B. Now, this is again the statement taken from some of the science document or the biomedical experiment document, that some drug or some chemical, you can not say the drug, or you can use the word chemical also. Chemical A was poured into chemical B. Now, who poured that chemical? If you write that I took drug A, poured it into drug B, and solution, I made the solution 10 ml. Now that becomes more engaging and more direct to the reader, and the reader finds it interesting. But if you say that drug A was poured into drug B, but who poured that drug and how it was done and what happened, if that is missing from your writing for the sciences or the life sciences, that makes your reader lose interest in your writing. So that is why, sometimes that is why it is said that in academics, it is the rule that we use such things, because our goal is to get the marks, to get the grades, and teacher is looking at what we know, that whether the drug A should be poured into drug B, and if that step is correct, you get the marks. But when you are writing for the audience whom you want to read your content, to find it interesting, to find it engaging, and to repeat what you have done, then your writing must be interesting, engaging, clear, and precise, which you can make it only by converting your passive sentences to active sentences. I hope you are getting the basic message that it is not about that active voice is good or bad. The only thing is that active voice gives activeness in your writing. Active voice makes your writing more engaging, more effective, more clear to the reader. And of course, there is a role of passive voice, which also we are going to study, and which we are also see that when the passive voice is important, so that when you make your content, when you do your writing, you must choose that where you can put in passive voice and where you should go for active voice. Now, when to use passive voice in your writing? Now, if passive voice exists in the language, it means there must be some use of passive voice as well. Now, first is save the passive voice for some defined purpose. In general, you use active voice, but sometimes at some places for the defined purposes, passive voice is very important. Keep it for that, and we will discuss that where they become important. That points we will give in this session. Second point is make a balance between active and passive voice to generate interest of readers. So it is not like that your writing is always in active or always in passive, because it's both the things will make your writing overall interesting. So make a balance between the two. And that balance is on an average 15% to 20% of the passive voice is allowed as a professional. So your biomedical content becomes engaging and effective for the readers. Not more than 20%. 80% you should always keep in active voice. People should know that who is doing what and to whom. And 15 to 20% is passive, and that too with the reason. It's not like anywhere you can put passive voice. There must be defined reason that why you are using that passive voice, which will be clear to you in the coming slides. Now, know the incidences or the circumstances where passive voice becomes priority or makes sense to justify your message. You should know that why you are doing, what are the incidences, what are the circumstances where passive voice is important for your reader. And if you can justify that message, then you will automatically identify that where to use the passive voice. And it's not a very difficult job. Let me tell you, once you start using this, once you start focusing on that, I have to focus on improving the voice of my writing, you will definitely be able to identify the places where passive voice is more important compared to the active, and where the active voice should be used, you will be easily able to identify. And then you can easily see that your readership, or when people will, when your peers or your colleagues will read to the same stuff, their reaction and their understanding of your content will increase, and that will give you a sense of satisfaction that you have prepared a good content for your subject of life sciences or biomedical. Now, this is the reason when to use passive voice in your writing. The first reason to use passive voice is text refers to many researchers or people in organization, and it is hard or difficult to insert a subject. Sometimes when you're doing some research or writing about something, it is not a one person or one researcher. There are many people involved. For example, as I told you that when a bank gives you some statements in the passive voice, it is not like they want to cheat you. The reason is because they cannot take the name of a one person, because that one person is not involved in that activity. So it is the entire organization or the entire group of researchers which are conveying the message. So at that point where the subject is not clear, or the subject is not, it is hard to define the subject, then you use the passive voice. This is the first reason when we use the passive voice. Means it is difficult to find out or identify the subject. Second reason is the subject of the verb is so obvious and unimportant that it would actually distract the reader to be included. This happens, suppose you are performing the experiment, and again in every sentence you say, I poured drug A into drug B, I took the drug C, I did this, I did that, rather than saying I and I and I again and again, because that becomes annoying to your reader. So you have to understand that when the subject becomes obvious, when people know that this writer has done this particular work, and you have defined that thing in the beginning of your article, then no need to repeat that thing to distract your reader from the important or the main subject. This is the second reason when you use the passive voice in your biomedical writing. Then comes the third reason why you use the passive voice. When object in the sentence is so important that you want reader to focus on it. Sometimes, as I told you, there are three parts: subject, object, and the verb. Subject means the human part who is doing what. If sometimes it happens that your object is more important. For example, just see the sentence below, which says 4-centimeter tumor was found that was earlier not seen in any of the diagnostic reports. Now, 4-centimeter tumor, we want to focus on this because earlier that was not found, and this is an important observation by the doctor or the person who is doing this. But the important is not the doctor. Important is that the 4-centimeter tumor has been suddenly found, and which was not available in any of the diagnostic reports. So you want to focus on this tumor. Then you have changed the sentence into passive voice, and you brought the object of the sentence in front so that the reader focuses more on your object, which is of focus to your story. It is not important, the doctor is not important, diagnostic reports are not important. The important part is that you observed 4-centimeter tumor. So I hope this particular point is also important, and it is very well clear that when your object in the sentence is so important that you want reader to focus on that only first. Now, this is the fourth reason when to use the passive voice in your writing. The fourth reason says when there is an urgent need for diplomacy to avoid any conflict with the reader. Being into life sciences or the biomedical sciences, sometimes it happens that there are certain things which creates the controversy or which creates the kind of conflict of interest among the readers and the writers. At that point, you cannot directly say some things where you don't want to fight with the reader, or you are not going to annoy the reader. So you have to diplomatically place the things so that nobody feels offended from your writing. So when there is a need for diplomacy and you don't want to create a conflict, sometimes you have to directly say in your writing that I did this, which your reader feel may not be correct. At that point, the passive voice becomes important, because then you don't say that I did this, you say this was done for this reason. Who has done? You hide that because you don't want to create any conflict with your reader. So this is also one of the important place, and you have to check where you don't want to disclose or where you want to be diplomatic in your writing and you don't want to create any conflict with your reader. Then is the final reason for the using the passive voice, which is to maintain the linguistic flow and add variety to your sentences in your content. See, when you write, main thing is your reader should enjoy what you have written, and your reader will only enjoy if he or she does not enjoy your story only, but he enjoys your words, the flow, the type of sentences, the kind of a language you use, the easiness, the readability of your text, the clarity in your message. All these things makes your language flow in the mind of readers. And the more you use the variety of sentence, the more attractive and more engaging your writing becomes. To add that variety to your sentences in a content and to maintain that linguistic flow, there is a need that you should add or use 15 to 20% of sentences with the passive voice. Now, this linguistic flow, how it is added, there is one principle of old before new. And this says that whenever you are writing a sentence, the last sentence, just see to in this particular slide, which says the sentence says the scientists are researching nutrition by using methods such as digestibility studies, where they collect and analyze fish feces to see how well fish digest different diets and ingredients. The most promising diets are then evaluated in commercial farm ponds or cages. Then from the next sentence, in the next paragraph, you start your paragraph with evaluated diets are then. You can see we have started with the passive voice just because we want to again start our next paragraph with the end of our previous paragraph. So to add that previous sentence in the previous paragraph, the next paragraph starts with the passive voice sentence, which conveys the same meaning or the same message which you have given in the active voice in your previous paragraph. So this principle says that everywhere, whenever you are making a new sentence and you are adding some old information to that, start with the passive voice. That makes your language flow in a better way and get easily grasped by the reader's mind. Now becomes that with this whole story, what I want to say is that there are two voices, active voice and passive voice. And out of this, we have to use, as a good biomedical writer, 80% of the times, 80 to 85%, we must use active voice. 15 to 20%, we can use the passive voice. And active voice makes your writing precise. That means you use the lesser number of words. Active voice means you are going to put your humans in your sentences first. Active voice means you are clear in your message. Active voice says that you are adding humans to your sentences. Don't hide yourself. Say openly that I have done this, I have found this finding, i I have found, I have concluded, I have done. The reader will become more engaged because then they'll feel that you have done something, because you're confident to say that thing actively rather than hiding yourself somewhere at the end of sentence or somewhere somewhere missing in the sentence, and the reader is just thinking about who has done what and there is no human part in your sentence. So this is how the active voice becomes important for all your active writing assignments or writing articles about the health sciences or the life sciences. So in this cartoon also you can see that the sentence was written in the active voice by the boy. So this sentence is actually written in the passive voice, and the boy wrote in the passive voice. If you see, the same sentence is written in the active voice and the passive voice, but when it is written in the passive voice, it emphasizes on the active voice, but when it is written in the passive voice, it is emphasizing on the active voice. So this is how it just, as I told, that it is all about the playing with the words. Writing is all about playing with the words, and how you jumble them, how you make them arrange with each other to create good sentences, how you create your voice. And there are things which changes the tone of writing. We will also discuss in one of the sessions about the tone of writing. And these are the things which are the elements of writing which together uh, uh, fit in and gives the shape to your writing. Because once you are good at these small things, it becomes automatically easier to convey your message in a more clear, effective, and engaging manner to your readers. So don't just throw your words, play with them, adjust them, reduce them, confuse them, and rearrange them to make your message as interesting as possible, as engaging as possible, as clear as possible, as punchy as possible. And that will make you a better writer and differentiated writer in your field of biomedical sciences or the life sciences. With this, I would like to end this session. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll get back to you with the next more interesting and more engaging session about biomedical content writing. Thank you so much.